Hey guys, what up? Dr. Ray here, CEO of the Learning Liaisons. And guess what? In this video, you're going to get to watch one of our recent webinars. In this webinar, we invited one of our leadership specialists, Dr. Paulie Gavoni, do a FELE prep webinar for a ton of aspiring school leaders. And you're going to get to watch this webinar right now. We're going to focus in on the constructive response. That's subtest number 3 of the Florida Educational Leadership Exam. So sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and let's get it to roll and learn how to crush your constructive response. Let's check it out.
All right, it's 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. Let's get ready to roll. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So you signed up for tonight's session. This is one of our free webinars here at the Learning Liaisons. And we titled this, How to Crush Your Constructive Response section of the FELE exam. So I know based on the poll at the beginning, a lot of you guys have never taken the exam. And like I mentioned before, we love to hear that because we're going to correct a lot of the wrongs to save you a bunch of money, a bunch of time, and make sure you're going on the right path towards success. So welcome to the Learning Liaisons community. My name is Dr. Jason Ampel, Dr. A, Jason, whatever makes you happy. I'm the founder and CEO of the Learning Liaisons. I do a lot of the courses myself here, but we also do have a team of rock star educators and school leaders like the one you're about to meet here in a second. Dr. Paulie is one of our team members here, and he heads up the leadership course, especially for the FELE, and then one of our national leadership courses as well. So if you're new to the Learning Liaisons, give me a yes in the comment box if this is the first Learning Liaisons event that you ever attended. I'm pretty sure most of you are going to say yes because you're coming from Facebook and saw our ads and maybe some colleagues. So welcome. We welcome you. Thank you for taking the time. I know with schools rolling out and starting, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of situations, malfunctions going on. So you guys are taking time out of your busy schedule on a Tuesday evening. And that tells a lot to us. That tells us that you're serious. We had about 100 people sign up for this webinar. And you guys who showed up, we know we all have busy lives and things come up. So that's why we're going to give access to the recording too. And we'll talk about that in a second. So here at the Learning Liaisons, not to talk too much, but we've been doing this 7 days a week since 2014 when we started providing prep online and in person for the Florida teacher certification exams. And then we rolled out our FELE course, I guess about maybe 2 years ago or so. And there are several universities that have it as a requirement for their graduate students. A lot of school districts share it. So this is actually the first free webinar that we're doing for the FELE, and we're really excited to be able to offer you guys some insight, especially to the constructive response section. So since 2014, we've helped over 7,000, we just reached the 7,000 teacher mark a couple months ago, helping them on their journey towards passing their teacher and leadership certification exams. So go ahead and check our reviews on Google and our Learning Liaisons Facebook page. You'll see that we help a lot of people and we love what we do every day. So we're excited to get to meet you and help you out here this evening with your journey towards becoming a school leader, because we need you. We need good school leaders. So that's a little bit about me, and Dr. Paul is going to take over in a little bit. Like I mentioned before, he's one of the team members here, but more importantly, he is a Amazon bestseller, correct, with your new book that I sent out to everybody. We'll talk about that more at the end. I've got a cool little thing where I'm going to give out some free copies. Who wants a free copy of Dr. Paulie's book at the end? Stay tuned in the end. I'm going to talk about that. We're going to give some free copies away of his leadership book. And he does national presentations. He's a school leader. I'll let him talk a little bit about himself as well. Do you want to introduce yourself there?
Yeah, sure. Very excited to join. And I really, truly do love sharing to help people. It's one of my passions. You know, I'm actually a behavior scientist. He has it listed here as a scientist, behavior scientist. And I think what you're going to find is that I'm not sure if you've read leadership books or, you know, whatever you've been doing to prepare for your tests or whatever training or professional development that you've received through higher education or in your schools. The stuff I'm going to talk about is at the root of leadership. It's at the root of all change, whether it's individual change, group change, or organizational change. That's why this stuff can't be wrong. The book, Jason just mentioned it, Dr. A just mentioned it, that it's a bestseller. It's called Behavioral Karma, The 5 Scientific Laws of Life and Leadership. And those principles I'm going to be talking about through here, because I'm going to give you solid strategies. Again, the strategies can't be wrong. They're rooted in science. So if you understand some basic principles, then you're going to be able to get through this part of the test just fine. And I think we're different than any of the other prep courses, because not only are you going to learn about how some simple strategies for passing the test, but really what I want to see is that you have some very important skills, knowledge and skills, right, and attitude for being the best school leader that you can be. Because from my own research, I've found that school leaders can impact student achievement by up to 25%. That's just one person. So it's very important that you guys know not only what to do, you know how to do it, you know when to do it. And if you have very simple, basic principles of the science of human behavior as a guide for assessing, for problem solving, and making decisions, then you're going to be far, far ahead of the average school leader that's out there. And you're going to be able to use these principles in your everyday life as well. So it's cool. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're so happy to have Dr. Paulie here with you guys, and he's going to take over a little bit. I'm just going to go over some housekeeping things, get the ball rolling, then I'm going to turn over the mic to Dr. Paulie, and then I'll take over at the end to wrap it up. So before we begin, obviously we're doing an online session here. A couple of housekeeping items real quick. You're going to get access to this recording. We're going to put it on our YouTube channel. So I want you guys to have your camera out ready on your phone, because there's a couple things you're going to want to take pictures of. And coming up here in a second, you're going to have your camera open here in a minute. So we're going to upload this video to our YouTube channel within the next couple of days. You're allowed to ask questions. The focus here tonight is on the constructive response. So when Dr. Paulie takes over and walks you through how to write it, how to answer it the right way, teaches you a strategy. If you have questions on topic, feel free to throw them in the comment box or use the mic. But if you do turn on your mic, just make sure it's muted when you're not talking. If you have something that comes to mind, because I know for myself when I sit on trainings, I have like a question that comes to mind that I want to ask, but it's not really on topic, but I don't want to forget it. Jot it down, or you can use the Q&A. So if you're new to Zoom, as educators, or everyone has experience with Zoom at this point, on the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a Q&A. If you have a question that is not on topic, but you want us to answer it, throw it in there. At the end, we'll rattle through those. That's for the off-topic questions. But if they're on topic with this discussion, use the chat box for that. We're going to be going for about 75 to 90 minutes. So we plan for 5:30 till 7 o'clock. The bad news is, and I had a bunch, every time we do these webinars, we do a lot for the teacher exams. I always get a couple of people email me, I'm so excited to come. I can't wait to do the webinar and go take the test and pass. Well, this is a good first start, but unfortunately, this alone is not going to get you past, get you through, because this is a big exam. We'll talk about it. We're going to get you in the right direction and make sure you have what you need before you leave to be successful, not have to pay the state multiple times. This is a real deal number here. According to the Florida Department of Education, on average, first attempt success, that's an aspiring leader like yourself, going in and passing all of the 3 subtests on the first shot is about 58%. Now, our pass rate here at the Learning Liaisons is above 90%, but that's according to the DOE. Now, there's a couple of big reasons. I'm not going to get into too much detail because I don't want to take time away from Dr. Paulie, but one of the big reasons is they changed this exam a few years ago, back in 2016. A lot of these exams went through an overhaul, and the majority of the questions on this test, like the multiple choice, are scenario-based. So you have to think conceptually and not only understand concepts, but how to apply them to the school environment. Same thing with the writing. You have to, I'm not going to take away, he's going to talk about that, but you're going to have to not only know things, be able to apply them to the real deal school campus. So that's one of the big reasons. And the other one is study guides. You can't memorize stuff for this exam. You got to understand it and know the why. All right, that's real important. So that brings us to the next one. We don't sell books. We don't sell things online. We have rock star educators and leaders like Dr. Paulie here, where these are people in the field. So we deliver video content, practice questions, activities online, and we'll talk about that more in the end. Like I said, make sure you have your camera out, especially here in a second. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but I want you to have your camera out ready to go. And last but not least, a little plug for our Monday night free PD. Every Monday night, with the exception of the holiday, we do free streaming PD where I have a special guest. We've got bullying experts, school leaders, principals, teachers of the year from around the state and around the country. We started on June 1st. So this upcoming, actually, it's a good coincidence here. I didn't plan it that way, but we have one of the principals of the year from Osceola County, who I've known for a long time, Miss Christy Ray. She's really good expert in creating resumes. So if you want to be a school leader, you might want to brush off your resume and tweak it a little bit. Definitely want to, it's free. Monday night, we stream on our YouTube channel. So I could send you guys information about that, but it's real easy at the Learning Liaisons. So with that being said, real quick, take your phone out. All right, I'm gonna give you guys 60 seconds. Take your phone out. There's your first quiz of the night. You don't have to take a picture. Just take your phone out. We love technology here. and just point the camera at the QR code on the screen. You don't take a picture, just point it at the screen. It's gonna open up a window on your phone with our social media channels, but more importantly, the first one is our YouTube channel. So there's a couple of reasons why I want you guys to subscribe, and when you do, put yes in the comment box when you do that, because one, we have webinars like this that are all on there. We don't charge for our webinars. And two, I have a lot of strategies and techniques for test preparation, not just for teachers, but for aspiring leaders. And I just finished our 7 steps to success on your teacher and leadership certification exam series. And all those the 7th step is going to be relaunched, I believe, tomorrow. And that's all on the YouTube channel. So that's applicable to you guys too. So if you want to do it the old school way, just take a picture of the link and you can do it later on. So I'll give you guys another 20 seconds. Go ahead and do that. Just point the camera at the QR code, click on that YouTube, subscribe, give me a done in the comment box, and we'll get rolling here in a couple seconds. Awesome, awesome. Good job, Lydia. This is the hardest thing tonight. This is the hardest thing you're going to do here tonight. Everything else is a breeze. All right, so I know everyone here wants to pass their Florida Educational Leadership exam, but yet you're dealing with these ridiculous tests by the state because they're not indicative of your leadership skills. Yes, you need to know some content. Yes, you need to know how to apply it. But just like the teacher exams, they don't test how smart you are, how great of a leader you are. They're a performance and they're a check mark in order to get to that leadership role. So it makes aspiring leaders like yourself, and a couple of you guys failed, so I know you're frustrated because we've all been through these exams as well. It makes aspiring leaders feel depressed, anxious, and questioning their careers, whether or not they actually want to be a school leader, and obviously that's wrong. So like I mentioned before, since 2014, we've helped almost over 7,000 teachers get through their certification exams, teacher and leadership. And it's not because we're geniuses and we know all the questions on the test. It's because we provide a level of support and motivation that is unparalleled in any guide or any other online resource. We're here to help you and hold your hand until you pass. That's the key. That's what differentiates us. Because we understand your pain because we've been through it ourselves. Dr. Paulie's been through this exam. I've been through all the exams. We know that we've been in your shoes. So here's what you need to do about it. Pretty simple. Follow along today, ask questions, and soak it all in. Don't try to sit there and write everything down that he says or I say, because you could watch the recording and take some notes. But if you get some aha moments, you're going to want to write those down, maybe take a picture. And then you're going to practice what Dr. Paulie goes over here today. And there's a reason why you need to do it. Pretty simple, because if you don't, you won't be able to get your leadership position. Or if you're a grad student, who here's a grad student? If you're a grad student, let us know in the comment box, in the chat box. If you're a grad student, you have to pass this in order to graduate. So it's a big deal. We work with NSU, Broward County, Florida Southern, a lot of schools where they send students to us, they make it a requirement because they have to pass us in order to get that diploma. And we don't want that to happen. We want a good thing to happen. Like here, we want you to get that passing score to send us your selfie so we can post it and tell the world. So if you want a good thing to happen, can I get you to type a yep in the chat box? YEP, not yes, it's your second quiz. Yep in the chat box. Go ahead, give me a yep. Oh, exclamation point. I like that, Kelly. Got a little emphasis on that one. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So there are 3 keys to passing this exam. This is a theme that runs through all of our trainings here at the Learning Liaisons for both leadership and teachers. That's knowledge, skill, and attitude. I'm going to go through these real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Paulie. Knowledge. Many of you guys never taken this exam. Many people that we meet that fail this exam and spend all this money. I don't know about you, but I don't have a money tree in my backyard. I wish I did, but these exams are expensive. So you want to make sure you know what you're getting into. So just some of the basics here. You're talking about 195 multiple choice questions, sometimes 199, and a written performance section, and that's obviously what we're going to focus on here today. So this is an all-day ordeal. It is tiresome, it is stressful, but you need to know what you're getting yourself into, like the passing percentages and the number of questions you need to get right. You have to educate yourself because a lot of teachers that I talk to face-to-face, on the phone, in our workshops, they have no idea and they keep walking into a buzzsaw. So knowledge is power, especially on this exam. And there are a lot of strategies that come into play when you know about the test. So we talk about that more in our boot camp courses online. So knowledge and strategy. I love Saturday Night Live. A little strategery. So this test is 80% strategy and 20% content. So I stand by that 100% for years every day, because you can memorize concepts, you can memorize laws, you can memorize everything out your butt all day long. But if you don't know what it looks like in a classroom environment or in a school environment or analyze data, then you're not going to pass this test. It's about application. That's the key here. So do you have a proven strategy for success? And Dr. Paulie is going to teach you a little strategy, and we're going to give you some insight when we talk about the constructive response. And last but not least, before we turn it over to Dr. Paulie, attitude, like the rock here. How are you self-assessing and practicing to build confidence? A lot of people say, well, I wasn't really ready, but I want to knock it out because I want to get into that leadership pool and get my job. Well, you know what? Like our parents or family members and guardians told us when we were younger, if you think you're going to fail, you're going to fail. That is very true on all of these exams, because there's a lot of stakes tied to this. So you want to make sure that you're ready, and we'll teach you how to do that along the way. So who's ready to start clearing up the confusion and prep smart on your FELE? Give me a yes in that comment box. And a bonus for the first person who tells me what movie that's from. Showing my age right now. Anyone know what movie that is? I got you doing multiple things at the same time. That's not a good teaching strategy. Ferris Bueller. Gina, bonus points for Gina. Good job. All right, they're all yours, Dr. Paulie. I'll be back on when we'll wrap it up at the end. So they're all yours.
Sure. Lori was in a close second there. So very cool. Thanks again for having me on, Dr. A. And again, I'm happy to share some my what I've learned. Just a little bit about my background. I spent almost 2 decades in education. I've been a teacher. I've been a professor, which is just a teacher. I've been a school leader. I've actually was a manager for a school turnaround team. And I was a CEO of a private school. And so I've seen a lot of good things and I've seen a lot of bad things. And I've seen so much bad things, and I'm like, man, there's a systemic issue. And there's people doing things wrong that mean to do them right. It's inadvertent. I believe there's a lot of good people out there that are just making some simple mistakes. And why? Well, I think that personally that higher education hasn't done the greatest job training school leaders in what's necessary to be successful. And I'm saying that because I don't want you to think that, because you will end up passing this exam. There's no doubt about it, zero doubt about it in my mind, especially if you go through some of the principles that we're talking about. Again, it's about strategy. And that is, this test exam, passing or failing it, is not a measure of your ability to lead. I just want to say that up front. It's not at all a measure of your ability to lead. I was a poor test taker in lots of things, and I managed to pass this test because of the simple principles I use. The writing part, because you heard that I'm an author, you might think, well, it was easy for you to pass that because you're a good writer. Well, the test takers aren't really looking at, your ability to, string together sentences. They're not looking at your grammar, that you're like a fantastic writer. What they want to know that you can take a look at whatever information that you're provided, assess it accurately. And it's not that difficult. There's numbers and it can look confusing, but it's actually not that difficult at all. And come together maybe with a simple plan. And my wife had taken, in full transparency, and she'd probably kill me for saying this, so don't tell anybody, although this is going to be like posted somewhere. She took and failed this, the written part of it. And so I taught her these principles, and she passed it. Well, she had a group of people that she was supporting and mentoring, and they had also failed it. And she taught them these basic principles, and they also passed it. And since that time, and I think Jason can talk to this, there's been many people who have used these principles. So I'm saying this because I want you to have confidence in these, and I want you, like he said, to sit back and absorb the principles. If you look at other prep courses, what you don't know what's in the test maker's mind in terms of, having a specific response. This isn't about like having an encyclopedia of knowledge. It's not about crystallized knowledge. It's about fluid knowledge. And again, being able to take a look at something, problem solve, and make a decision based on that data. If that makes sense to everybody, can you guys type a yes in there, please? Cool. Yeah. All right. Very, very, very cool. Okay. So I want to dive right into, we're going to take a look at an example of what you might find on the FELE. And this is structured based on, well, although it's different, this is structured based on some of the samples that the state has provided. So for some people that look at this, it could look very confusing. Like, these are a lot of numbers. I don't know what to do with these. But we're going to break it down very simply. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that when you are going to write your response to this, the mistake that people make, and the rubric's online, it's available for you at the FELE. All the rubric is based on is the questions that they ask you. So you want to make sure that you are answering those questions. Click the next button for me, Dr. A, please. So here, if you look, they're saying that this is what they want you to do, right? There was an executive summary requested, and this is what is requested in that executive summary. And there are these 4 things. So a little kind of hack here, a little simple strategy is that when you go to write your stuff down, right, because you can type it in, go ahead and write these sentences out. And then you can write under those, much like it's a subheading, right? Like it's an outline. And then you want to fill in underneath that. So that way you can reflect back to that question, right? Those bulleted points, to be sure that you are actually responding and doing your best to answer whatever point that they've requested. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you guys agree with that? Does anybody have any questions on that? If you agree with it, please type a yes in there. If you have a question about it, please, feel do we keep the subheading or erase them? No, that's a good question. Keep the subheading. There's nothing wrong. That's a great question. Keep the subheading there so they know that you're addressing it. You can build it right into the sentence, or you can, say, and this is an analysis of the data and identify data trends. Here's a description of the additional data that's needed. So that way, whoever the test reader, make it easy for them. Make it easier for them to identify that you put in the elements that they've requested, because we don't want them to make a mistake as well, because they're people reviewing the test, and they could make a mistake. I'm sure they're pretty good with it, and that's limited, but just make it easier on their eyes, okay? So they can be like, all right, there it is, there it is, there it is, okay? So the other piece of this is taking a simple look at the data. And so the first part, that first bullet says analysis of the data that identifies trends and a description of any additional data. We're going to just start with analysis there. You don't have to use any crazy words, big words, anything. And I'm going to give you some simple words to use, but click the next slide, Dr. A. Yeah. So first of all, we need to understand the direction that data is going. So in this case, because sometimes it's arranged vertically, or it might be arranged horizontally, and I will give you another example of what it looks like if it's arranged horizontally, because I just don't want you to be thrown off by that. If you're used to being trained in the data is going left to right, or it's going from up to down, then you might see something, you might analyze it incorrectly. In this case, the data is going down. There's year 1, there's year 2, there's year 3 requesting, right? And then you can see trends that are going on there. Go ahead and hit the next slide, Dr. A. So in this case, if you guys were to say, all right, analyze this data, what are you seeing there? What words might you pop into? And I don't want you to overthink it. I mean, it's very like, what might that data tell you? If anything, if it told you anything, you guys can type in the response there. Like, is it moving one way? Is it moving another way? Is it staying the same? What does the data in that box that you're seeing there tell you?
And a quick thing, I didn't mention this at the beginning for all you guys who are participating. On the chat box, go ahead and make sure it's clicked to all panelists and attendees. All you guys have, I think is by default, have panelists. So just me and Dr. Paulie see it. So all the other people in the group aren't seeing your responses. So right in that chat box, the little blue tab, just click so it says all panelists and attendees.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, so I don't want you guys to feel like I'm comfortable typing stuff out there, but I'm getting amazing stuff here, right? Here we go. Somebody said it increased year 2. Yeah. So year 2, you see like for the learning gains and reading, increase year 2. That's something that you can reflect on. That's analyzing it. Some people are saying it remains stagnant. Yeah, I think that is pretty stagnant here, right? It's pretty consistent. So it's just telling you that based on, like I'm looking at, it's year one for the reading gain, started at 54, it ended at 54. But you could still reflect that, hey, you could literally use a word like, we started at 54, it went up in year two and down in year three. So really, things really stayed the same. And, what might you say about the math gains? Same thing, like started year one, 66. In the end, we went down to 65. We had, it moved down one. Very simple. Nothing confusing about that. Very clear. Nobody's trying to throw a trick on you or anything. It's just like, can I look at the data and be able to analyze the trends? One is unchanged. Go ahead and click the next box, please, Jason. Yeah, and what is this data telling you guys? What might this data be telling you? You can go ahead and type that in your box. And remember, you're looking at it from up to down. Same thing. What direction is it moving? Is it moving in a certain direction? Is it not moving? Yeah. That's it. I'm getting good words in here. Yep. Yep. Very cool. So I'm getting words like gradual increase. It's going up. Shows slight consistent growth. Increase in both lower quartile. Yeah. Very good. And I would reflect on what's increasing, right? So when you're talking about data, make sure that you're pointing out what specifically the data that you're speaking about, okay? So in both cases, shows a slight growth. So you would say, hey, we've got, for example, a slight growth in the learning gains in reading, the lowest 25% learning gains in reading. Yeah, both subjects. Good, Lydia. And so you can speak to it. You can use an adjective like that, say slight or more. You can just say it's increasing. It's increased by 7 points. It's increased by 9 points. And then you're making it as objective as possible. Although I don't think that you're going to be marked off for saying slight or major, but I think it's I'm not actually sure what slight or major would be. So you're probably going to be best just sticking to whatever the data says. It made a 7-point gain. It made a 9-point gain. It's relatively unchanged with, a -1, or made, 0 points gains. Makes sense for everybody so far? So that's not that hard, right? To do that. Yeah, it's make the bulleted points there. So you're answering that. So the first one says an analysis of the data that identifies data trends. Hey, all right. And each one, I have the category. One is unchanged, right? Learning gains and reading. Next one, decreased by 1, but it's kind of relatively unchanged. But you could just say decreased by 1. And then there's an increasing trend in both the reading and the mathematics. Reading went up, with the lowest 25% quartile. Reading went up 7 and 9. So the next question is, and keep it there, please, Dr. A. It says a description of additional data needed to further explain the data provided. So even though that data is telling you, it's giving you some information, right? It's a snapshot. The question is, why? What do we know about this? And I think that one of the things that people get caught up into is that they feel like they should know how to fix it. And so does anybody have idea why things are, if let's say this trend was going down, how do you fix that? What do you do about that? What are some of your thoughts about that? You can type in the box. Sandy, if you can use specific numbers, there's no reason not to, right? You could say percentage of learning gains in reading went up 1 point in year 2 and went back down year 3. We've got a relatively unchanged, so there's nothing wrong with that. Yep. You can also say it increased. You can say increased. I think, you couldn't go wrong by saying increased by 7 points, because it's just easy just to write by 7 points. The data is right there for you in this case. Yep. So needs assessment. Joan said needs assessment. Okay. So that's one of the things that you might, and what do you guys think might be needed? Now, this data is going up on the right. So with the lowest percentile, the quartiles going up, should we assess that? Is there a reason to assess that? You guys can type it in the box, please. If you're having a hard time thinking about that, which I know some of you guys are, Good. I'm getting some really good responses here. Good. Lydia and Gina, thank you. And Joan. Yes, I think it's important that we also assess when things are moving in the right direction. Why do you think it's important that we assess if things are moving in the right direction? Yeah, we should talk about the data pieces because that's a trend, right? So a description of additional data, end of your goal, right? Identify Marcus just killed it and Greg killed it and Andrew killed it. We want to find out what's going right as well. That's, as a leader, here's one of the things that we get. Oh, Tamika, you're killing it. Teacher turnover attendance. All those things can be data that are these different indicators. But when things are going right, people tend not to want to look at that stuff because, like, you know what? I don't want to really, I'm fine. I got to go deal with the problems. But one of the issues with that is that if something's going right, we need to know why it's going right so we can reproduce it, so we can make it into a methodology. So we might be able to take what they're doing over there and put it somewhere else. And as a school leader, that's very important because if you only look at the results of something, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting those results for the right reason. And for example, I used to work and I worked in many high poverty schools. These were my passions. And we were having a lot of behavior problems. And there was one classroom that, because I created a whole code system and we were having to remove kids and they were fighting. There was one classroom that we never had anybody called out of the classroom. And I thought, well, I'm good with that. I'm not even going to mess with that. Well, come to find out that the substitute teacher was when the kids would act out, and I'm going to say that, actually I need to de-identify this a little bit more, but let's just say that the kids were kind of afraid to act out. Okay. They didn't do anything terrible, but there was a threat in place that something could happen. And that wasn't a great thing because as soon as that sub left, the place went crazy. The kids weren't learning. They were behaving out of fear, which nobody's going to operate well under fear. And I'm going to prove that to you with science a little bit, because that's one of the big mistakes that leaders make. Not only not looking at what's going well, but they drive performance with fear, and they do it because they think it works. But what you get out of people is people doing just enough to get by, and only when you're looking. And as a school leader, you can't look at everything. What you need to do is you need to foster self-accountability, and people are able to manage their own behavior, and people are behaving in a way and they're seeing a positive outcome as a result of their behavior. So they're going to continue doing it even when you're not looking. And that's what good leaders do. They inspire this kind of self-accountability, but you have to learn about that. And I'm going to show you that with science. Okay. So we talked about that. Now, what about if this data was going in the wrong direction? So we said we want to find this stuff out, find out what's going right so we can reproduce it or make sure that people are doing the right thing. Also in like Georgia, they were like cheating on the test, right? They were getting a great outcome, but they were using the wrong behavior to achieve that outcome. So it's another reason. But what if it was going in the wrong direction? What kind of questions might you want to ask? What kind of data might you collect? And Tamika, by the way, Tamika said teacher turnover and attendance. That would absolutely be some data that you might want to collect. So what kind of data might you want to collect? And Joan, student survey. I love that. Formative assessments. Yes. What kind of interventions are in place right now? Yes, absolutely. All that stuff, right? But yes, a teacher survey. There's super research to support the use of, we call these as social validity measures, checking out to find out how people are feeling about things. It's a leading indicator, right? Teachers, I believe teachers are the greatest people on earth. What is more important than educators? And I firmly believe this, and I've even written it in my books, that the teacher should be treated as the star of the show, and everybody else, this includes the school and the district leader, should be the supporting cast. They should put you guys up on a pedestal, give you all the tools you need to be successful, because your success and the student's success is based on your success as a teacher, and your success as a teacher is based on the success of your school leaders, the professional developers, higher education, district leadership, the community, how much they support you. So I really, really strongly believe this. But surveys become, finding out how people are feeling are a good source of data that you can ask that. And you can ask all these things. teacher retention, right? Teachers leaving. What might that tell you if you're analyzing data to find out what do I need to do to make a change here? What information does that provide you if people say, I'm not feeling good about things, or, you know, people are leaving, there's high turnover? What might you need to focus on? Because that might directly impact student achievement. So where might the root issue be? Culture, teacher morale, and who's responsible for culture and teacher morale? And communication can be part of that. Staff morale, yes. Yes, the school leader. The school leader. And so at one point, that's going to be, and by the way, same for the school leader. If there's a lot of principals that have low morale, who's responsible for their morale? Who could we look at that we might need to take a look at their leadership? District leadership, yeah. You know, so there's something called reverse behavior engineering. And if you can imagine like just a chain and beginning at the right, your why. Why are we in education? What is the ultimate outcome that we want? What is that everybody's measured by? Student success, right? Student achievement, student outcomes, right? In order to produce those student outcomes, we need the student to behave a certain way. If the students are going to behave a certain way, we need the teachers to behave a certain way. So I'm moving from right to left. If the teachers are going to perform at a certain level, we need the AP to perform at a certain level. The teacher or the principals perform at a certain level, and then up to this, again, the district leader, and then on to even higher education, right? So this chain of behaviors that occur, and each one has a job to do, and each one is interlocking with the other and impacts. So I'm saying this because these are all pieces of the puzzle that can be assessed, because people tend to only look at student achievement, but the student achievement occurs as a result of all these other things occurring. Does that make sense, everybody? And would you guys agree with that? Good. Yes, good. I'm getting a lot of yeses here. Yes. And if there's somebody that doesn't agree, I would love for you to type it in there and say, like, you know, hey, yes. So who in here is familiar with school-wide PBS? You guys, and if you've used it, you probably think, well, it doesn't work. Well, it can't not work. If it's not working, it wasn't trained well, it wasn't coached well. And when I first came into the field, I thought we need like school-wide PBS for educators, because if we're going to bring out the best in the students, we need to bring out the best in the teachers, right? And we can't just tell people what to do, because telling people what to do, that's not educating people. That does not bring out the best. If telling people what to do worked, none of us would be here right now. The students would, because we said, tell the students, sit down and learn. We tell the teacher, go to the class and teach, you know. You would read something and you'd be able to go to do it. Outside of this, by the way, just so you know how well the science works, I'm a professional mixed martial arts coach, and I've had multiple world champions. Not because I'm anything special, because I'm equipped with the science of human behavior, which I'm teaching you right now, which you're going to learn even more about this. It works. It can't not work. So if you use this problem solving and decision making process as a leader, and if you use it as you do your writing prompt, you're going to be more likely to get the positive outcomes that you want. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead to the next slide here. Okay. So as you said in the first part, when you're looking at the data, the first thing we need to do is an assess. So you took a look at the trends, which direction they're moving, and then we kind of need to know why. So when you're making that response, you could say, you know what, I need to kind of find out what the problem is. And in order to do that, because unless they tell you what the problem is, you know, or if they might say the problem is teacher morale, but that still doesn't tell you exactly why teacher morale is low. You need data, right? And so how do we get data? Well, there's hard data and there's soft data. There's existing data that's in schools, right? There's formative assessments and quizzes and student achievement, all these things. And there's also softer data where you can get information from the staff, from parents, from the students, even though it's not on there, right? And most importantly, direct observation, right? It's always helpful to go in there and directly observe. But one of the things that you need to be able to do is what we call discriminate. That is know exactly what you're looking at, because I can look at something and you can look at something and we can see two different things. But it's important to directly see as much as possible, because taking one person's perspective on things or one data set doesn't tell a story. What you want to know is enough data to let you know the story. So this should be part of your prompt. Like, yeah, hey, what kind of data? Well, I want to find out like how the students, why the students think they're doing well. How do they feel about things? You know, what are the teachers thinks going on here? How, you know, how's leadership? Is the assessment aligned with the curriculum? You know, they might be teaching well. I might ask them questions about their instructional practices. I might find out like, you know, hey, it's not that the instructing well, but classroom management is poor, because they might be instructing very well, but if classroom management is not placed, that means you don't have students sitting and learning and they're disrupting other students, right? Does that make sense? So we got to get to what the problem is. Now, here's one of the behavior hacks. If you find that people aren't performing well, whether it's a student, and you're never going to forget this, okay? I promise you, you're never going to forget this, because it's this simple. If somebody isn't performing up to a standard, there's only two reasons, and that's it, and that's all. Jason's going to give, Dr. A is going to give you another cool point if you guess these two reasons. You can type it in the box there. What do you think? There are two reasons if somebody isn't performing up to a standard. And just go ahead and give it a shot. I won't call you out if you say something silly. Nobody can even see it. Oh, somebody just killed it. All right. They said motivation, and that goes in the classification. So one of the things is motivation, right? We'll call that a won't do. And that's a hint right there. Okay. Ability is close enough. I'm going to say skill, right? Yes. Can't do. So if somebody's not doing something, it's a can't do or it's a won't do. So I want you to think about the student. If the student is not skill and will, that's it. That's it. So when you're assessing performance diagnostics, right, when you're trying to figure out why somebody's not achieving, this is a simple hack. It's something I need to do performance diagnostics, right? You write that, you write that into your response. Like the brewer's like, what the hell is that? Well, I got to assess whether there's a motivation deficit, right? Or it's a can't do or won't do, because each is vastly different. Because if, let's say it's a student, you can set up all day long that, Johnny, I'm going to put you on a behavior contract. I'm going to give you a very cool point sheet. If you do better on this quiz and blah, 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 I'm going to give you your favorite thing. Okay. All that's going to do is piss Johnny off, because Johnny, if he has a skill deficit, can't do it. And he really wants that thing. It's like me saying, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million if you can run the 100-yard dash in, 5 seconds. You really want that $1 million, but there's no way you can, or maybe you can. I don't know. I don't even know what the numbers are for that stuff. But when you, oh, that's not driving, man. It's not driving. Does that make sense to everybody, that if somebody's not performing? And the same thing with a teacher. And if a teacher is not performing at a level, it's a skill deficit or a will deficit, right? A can't do or won't do, or what we call skill deficit or performance deficit. It just comes down to those two things. Yeah. So, by the way, if you want what this assessment looks like, and I'm going to go through a checklist here. If you guys connect with me on LinkedIn, I have written close to 100 articles on there. Many of them are about school leadership. Many of them are about coaching. And I've gotten 2 articles are written on there. One I co-authored with Anika Costa. She's a behavior analyst on the performance diagnostic checklist. You can use it as self-assessment as a leader. You can use it as when you're working with somebody figuring out why they're not performing well. A teacher can use it as a self-assessment when they're working with a student to figure out how they're going to approach this. Because if it's a skill deficit, what's the intervention there? What do you have to do if it's a skill deficit? You guys can type it in the box. Yeah, it's PD. But the good news is a lot of times it's not a skill deficit. Sometimes it is. But by putting everybody into the same group, like say giving the whole school, for example, PD, that could be a waste of time for a lot of people. What do we do in classroom with teachers? This is assuming that everybody in here is an educator and has taught them. I'm sure that you have. Do we give everybody the same thing? No. What do we call that when we, yes, we differentiate, right? We differentiate instruction. So I want to say that because one of the things that we talk about on our online prep course is like, if you're teaching a classroom, you're already a leader. And I want you to think about leading, because you're a classroom leader. Being a school leader is very similar. And you think about your teaching, those students are kind of like all your little employees, and you guys are all working together to get this outcome, this meaningful result, and that's this student achievement. And so the same thing when you move up to the school leader level, and that is you have, all these teachers, and now, the outcome that you want from them is them to, perform well and support the students with achieving. So it's the same kind of thing. And you have rules, and you have procedures, and there's consequences for good behavior and consequences for not so good behavior. All these things are going on. You're just doing it on a different level. So if you pull yourself back, if one of your employees as a school leader weren't performing well, you need to know what direction you're going to take. Are they having a skill deficit, or is it performance deficit? Skill versus will, right? Can't do versus won't do, because you're going to want to differentiate. You might have a group of people, for example, if coming back to classroom management, because that was my thing, if they're not performing well, some people might be seasoned. They don't need to be trained in it. You might put them in their own training and then provide them their own kind of coaching. And so you guys should write this down because this is another thing that's going to stick with you before I go on. It's Joyce and Showers 2002. Let me see. I'm going to type this in the box here because I want you to see it. Joyce and Showers 2002. And I cite this in a couple of my books. And if you type that in and you go to the visuals, and what you're going to see is a very cool visual that shows you that if you train people, right, if it's a skill deficit and you only give them theory, or you give them modeling, or even if you give them rehearsal with feedback, there's only going to be, I think, a 5 to 15% transference of those skills back into the classroom. Okay. Training in PD is critical. It's part of the formula. If somebody doesn't know how to do it, you have to teach them. But where the rubber meets the road is getting people in the habit of doing it. Okay. We need to create habits here for people. Okay. So in terms of your writing prompt, if you say, one of the things based on, I have teachers that are having a skill deficit, I'm going to make sure that they have the skills, and then I'm going to do some follow-up coaching with them. That's where we get a 95% return on investment when somebody's gone to a PD. It's the follow-up coaching. It doesn't have to be deep. It could be very simple, because the thing is, people will fall back into their old habits. So I want you to remember this, because I've done a lot of research on this and I've coined it, myself and Dr. Nick Weatherly. Training is concerned with skill acquisition, right? Building skills. Coaching is concerned with transferring those skills into the natural environment. In this case, getting people to perform in the classroom so that they end up getting in contact with a positive outcome. If it was you're trying to get, if it was very meaningful for the teacher to improve math scores, and they tried the skill that they were just trained in and they saw it improve math scores, do you think they're going to engage in that behavior again, or they're going to stop doing it? And the answer is they're definitely going to do it again. If I taught them some sort of classroom management skill and they went back into the classroom and they did it and they saw an immediate impact on student behavior, they're going to keep doing it again because their job just got easier, because they get in touch with what we call positive reinforcement. Does that make sense to everybody? So the goal is, once you give them the skills, you want to support them long enough with the skills to help them develop a habit so they're successful with it. So in your writing prompt, you can say, based on this, if I have to give a training, I'm going to, make sure that there's some follow-up coaching, and this is going to be part of the prompt, right? Because coaching involves having some sort of metric, having some sort of way to give, on what they're working on, the result and the behavior, having some way to give some feedback on the result and the behavior, and getting them in touch with some sort of reinforcement. And I'll make that very clear to you guys. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. This is breaking this down. Good. Yes. Modeling and rehearsal, Joan, is very important. That's in the Joyce and Showers. But a lot of people think that you just got to get in there and model for the teacher. And that's a very small percentage of what it works. What we need is show them how to do it. Now they go do it. And when they do it and get in contact with success, they're going to continue to do it, even in the absence of leader, even in the absence of the coach, the professional developer who's in there. It's a mistake that I think that I heard many school leaders make, and say, you got to get in there, model. No. You need to model a little bit so they know what to do, and then you need them to get them to engage in it, and then you coach them so they're supported. So here's part of those articles I was talking about, this performance diagnostic checklist, and this will make sense. If somebody's not performing well, there's two halves. The skill deficit's in the red. Have they received training? These are simple questions you can ask. Do they understand the why? Why do you think it's important that people understand the why? You can type in the box here. Purpose. Yeah. If people don't understand the why of doing something, then they're not going to see how it's valuable to them. So I know one of the things that teachers are overwhelmed constantly, and leaders as well. If you can show them that and get them up front, we call it an establishing operation. You don't need to know that. I just want you to know there's science behind it. It raises motivation. Andrew, you just said it. If you can get their motivation up, they're going to be more likely to want to engage in the behaviors required to achieve that result, right? Because you need them to start doing something, and they have to do it long enough and correctly enough, accurately enough, so that way they are able to access that positive outcome, which they need to see. And that's where like metrics come in. I'll explain that in a second, okay? Okay. Do they have regularly achievable goals? We need to set goals for people. They need to know specifically how to achieve those goals. A very simple way to find out if it's a skill deficit is just ask them, can you tell me what you're supposed to do? And when you ask them to tell you, you say, can you explain precisely, what am I supposed to do here? And then, can you show me? And what's the difference there? Well, some people are able to say what they're going to do, but then when they show you, it's like, all right, it's a little bit off. It needs a little bit of tweaks. They might say, like, for example, hey, how should you increase engagement? What's a good strategy for that? And they say, well, managing response rates. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, which, by the way, is a really good strategy for increasing engagement. If the questions are linked to a standard, it's a really good way to teaching students and accelerating their achievement, because you have a goal and learning a standard, and you're asking questions related to that goal. And so, but here's the little hack. Here's the mistake that people make. You say, okay, yes, that's exactly right. Can you demonstrate how you're going to ask the questions? That's role play. And they say, okay, and let's say they're working with me. They say, Paulie, and we're pretending that we're in a class. They call me out by name first, and they ask me the question. When you ask a student, call a student first, and then ask the question, you effectively disengage the rest of the students. I'm not going to say that always happens, but you increase the likelihood that's going to happen. However, when you ask the question first and you use like a random picker, like a popsicle stick, right? And you pause and then you call using that number, students never know if they're going to be called on. And this increases likelihood that they're going to engage in the thought processes that link to whatever question that you ask them. Does that make sense to everybody? If you can type in the bottom, yes or no. Yeah. Okay, good. Yes, that's good. So by asking them to tell you, then asking them to demonstrate it, that's where the rubber starts to meet the road again. And when you're writing your stuff out, if you want to give an example, feel free to do that. But it's important that you understand that that's an easy way to do it. And then there's a performance deficit. Some of it's that they know what to do, but they do it slowly. If somebody's doing something slowly, what might that be an indicator of? Somebody can do it, but they're doing it slowly. What do you think needs to happen for that person? Yeah, Gina just killed it. More practice. We would just call that a fluency issue. It means they're doing it slowly because they just have to think about it. And the goal is fluency or like automaticity, right? Just like the students. You do this all the time if you're teaching math or reading, where they can just respond automatically without thinking. So it just means they need to get more repetition in it, okay? Is there a process or a plan laid out? So like, teaching would be like, hey, I got to get your attention first. I'm going to set an expectation. I'm going to ask questions, or classroom management. I'm going to, pre-teach expectations. I'm going to reinforce the kids with verbal behavior-specific praise when they're doing it. I have a routine for handing in papers. If people don't have a process in place, it's like teaching somebody how to drive, but there's no roads and highways and signs out there. It gets very convoluted and the effort becomes very great. It becomes very dangerous, and people are taking the eye off the ball, the real goal, because they're just thinking the moment because they've got too many things to think about. So that's why it's very important to have those processes in place. Do they have the necessary equipment? Hey, do you have, I was just talking about asking questions. They have a clicker, they have this and that and the other. They have a whiteboard. Do they have a projector if you're asking to do things like that? Here's a very important one. Do they see the impact of their performance? Why do you think it's important that people see the outcomes of their behavior, what they're doing? Why is that critical for sustainability and success as a leader, teacher, classroom leader, school leader, district leader? Why is that important as a student? purpose moves people. Okay, so we have a why, but I'm talking about the impact. When they're doing something, they're seeing that it's having that impact. Yes, Andrew just said it. So they have a reason to continue. If you're engaging in something, yes, results driven. If you're doing something, but you're not seeing the outcome that results from your behavior, it doesn't become a reinforcer to you. And I'm going to teach you what reinforcement really is. It's something just that occurs that's going to keep you continuing engaging in that behavior. So people tend to be poor observers of their behavior, poor observers of the impact of their behavior on the environment, and poor observers of the impact of the environment on their behavior. Like a student says something in the classroom and it upsets them and they respond a certain way and it becomes emotional, and that's having a negative ripple effect across the classroom. I have some immediate positive ripple effect for them where the kids sit down and they're quiet and they start learning, but then they've eroded morale and they've eroded the students' relationship with them. And while they might win the battle, they end up losing the war, right? So that's what I'm talking about. People are poor observers. So we need to help people as leaders, help them be better observers of their performance. And that's going to tie right into the 4 essentials that I'm going to show you, because this is where we use measurement and feedback. And part of being a leader and part of like your written responses where you can't go wrong, when people are making change and they know what result they want, they know the very pinpointed behaviors that are going to achieve that. They need to be able to see the change, right? They need to be able to know that they're engaging in the right behavior. They need to be able to see that they're moving closer to that result, right? This is data. But data in and of itself is not enough because they need to be able to see the data. If somebody's going in to collect data, or if there's like some sort of computerized data and it's being housed somewhere and they're getting it every month, how's that going to help them achieve if they're not getting lots of data? And this is why teachers are taught to do formative assessments, right? Because they need to be able to compare and contrast. They need to be able to see that there's a difference that's occurring as a result of their instruction, as a result of their classroom management. And good leaders, good coaches help people use data, right? They don't use data to show people that they're not measuring up. They use it to coach and help them become better. And they help them to recruit that data. They help them to be better observers of that data in the environment on themselves. So they don't have to always be there showing them what's going on. Does that make sense to everybody? Data should be used to guide, to support, to raise people up. If that makes sense, yes. Say yes. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yep. Cool. Okay. Now, here's the next part. If you've been in school-wide PBS, it says, are they receiving regular helpful feedback? Now, when we talk about helpful, that's an intention thing, intent, right? But I want you to know, as leaders, as classroom leaders, as school leaders, as district leaders, as leaders in your life, you are not measured based on your intent. Although intent is important, right? Because we all make mistakes, but you will be measured based on your impact. Okay. And this is why we have to learn to be good observers of our behavior and the impact of it. Okay. So there's something called the halo effect, and I think it's the horns effect. And that is, if you build a good relationship with your students, if you build a good relationship with your teachers, when you give them some sort of feedback, they're going to be more likely to perceive that feedback as helpful or positive. How does that good relationship occur? Well, it occurs by you recognizing more of what they're doing right and building from that, as opposed to more of what they're doing wrong. And also, when they are doing something wrong, it's not necessarily about what you say, it's about how you say it, okay? And so, like, if you're very coercive, you could really undermine a lot of the good work that you've done. So be careful of the way you look, the way you sound when you say things. And there's a ratio. There's like this 4-to-1 ratio that's a good idea to stick to, and that is you're having 4 positive interactions to every corrective one, but be careful about the way you say things to people, okay? So this is the feedback piece of it. We have to give feedback to people on how they're doing. If they're doing well, you're doing well, and here's why you're doing well. And here's the outcomes of you doing well, okay? You're doing A, B, and C. As a result of A, B, and C, here's the impact you're having. And so regardless of whatever question you get in a prompt, that's a universal truth. All learning requires feedback, and we have to give feedback to people. And so we have to give feedback on what they're doing, how it's impacting the result, and are they getting closer to the goal or not? So I'm going to show that in the 4 essentials. So another reason people might not be performing well, that student achievement number might be not moving. Let's say that there's been another focus, or people have not learned this thing yet. If you ask people to do more than just a couple things at once, people won't learn. And I know that you guys are getting a ton of stuff dumped on you right now because it's the beginning of the year. I want you to know that you're not in this boat alone. School leaders are getting it, administrators, teachers are getting it. I'm monitoring social media. People are working, I'm seeing like 9 hours to 16 hours a day. It's crazy out there, but we're going to get through this. There's no doubt about it. I'll be glad to look back. And my wife is an assistant principal right now in schools. And she leaves at 7:30. She doesn't get home till 8 o'clock. She's out delivering computers to homes. It's like, it's tough out there, So there's a lot of balls in the air right now, but know that you have to pick which ones are the big ones and focus on those, right? The things that are going to have the largest impact. We call these pivotal behaviors. You don't need this for the prompt, but because if everything's important, nothing's important, right? So what's the most important things to focus on? As a leader, you have to pick those things out, right? Engage people in it. If you ask people to do things that are too effortful and they're not seeing a meaningful result automatically, people are going to go back to the old habits because it's too much. So getting people in touch with, I wrote a book called Quick Wins, something that's very simple to do that produces a meaningful outcome is a good way to engage people and get them to believe in you as a leader, because they're like, you know what? This person, this gal, this guy really knows what they're doing. Let me go ahead and try to do something a little bit more effortful the next time it's asked. But if you ask people to do things that are really hard and the outcome is too far away and they're doing it, and they're not achieving that intended result, people will stop doing it, or you're going to be on them all the time saying, you need to do it, you need to do it, you need to do it. And then you're going to start putting a lot of negative in that relationship bank, and they're going to start to like you a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, and they're only perform when you're around. Okay. Then the last part is, do they value the outcome? Now, what I'm going to explain to you is that there are two types of values. People value things because it adds something to them that's meaningful, or they value something because it takes away something they don't like. Why do you guys do the speed limit? Is because you love doing the speed limit? It's so much fun. You love to take in the trees and the roads and be around the stop signs and lights. Is that why you do it? Why do you do the speed limit? The law. And what are you avoiding? Particularly because they can write those rules. It could be the law all at once. It could be written anywhere, right? You're avoiding a penalty, a ticket, right? You're avoiding the consequences of that thing. And what happens is when you speed, you do just enough to get by, right? We push the limit right to that spot. And when do we typically make sure that we're performing at our best level when it comes to speeding, right? When we're absolutely doing that speed limit, very close to it. Who's around? When you see the cops, right? You see the cops, you do, but the cops aren't everywhere. And so here's the thing. When you behave to avoid things, you do just enough to get by. Our students are doing that. You are doing that. Our school leaders are doing it. The only way to get people in touch or to get them to go above and beyond what you're going to see here is to get them in touch with something that's added, that's valuable to them, what we call positive reinforcement. Something that occurs that's meaningful to them, that when they see it occurring as a result of the behavior, they're going to continue to do it. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? And everything can't be positively reinforcing, but finding those couple of things that they need to do that are very important, like pivotal behaviors for a teacher, asking questions, teaching expectations, reinforcing behavior that we want to see. Those are all correcting behavior fluently, meaning that we're not yelling, but we already have pre-programmed consequences up that we involve with them and applying those consistently. These are all, and using a 4-to-1 ratio, these are all pivotal behaviors because they lead to other things, very important things to do. So we talk about valuing outcomes. We can't get them to be positively reinforced by everything, but there are a few things where good leaders can say, you know what, here's the goal. I know we can make this goal of improving, reading by 15% by, this within the next month. And if you can make that salient to them, they can see that they're moving because you're using measurement and providing that measurement as a source of feedback. And they see that by doing these 3 instructional strategies that they use and using these formative assessments that they're doing it and they're getting the outcome, they're going to be more likely to engage in that. They're going to feel really good because as a team, they're doing it. In fact, if somebody's not doing it and their achievement's moving in the wrong direction, like, I feel like a slouch. Everybody else is killing it, but I'm not. And they're going to want to get on board too, because it also becomes proof of concept. All those things fall within what I call the 4 essentials. So go ahead and move on to the next slide. These are the 4 essentials to success, right? And whether it be working with an individual student, an individual teacher, a group, meaning a classroom, or a group, meaning a great group, or it could be the entire organization. It could be the entire school. These are fundamental. These 4 essentials are fundamental to all change, okay? Making a difference. Pinpointing, and we call it pinpointing because, and these are the things that you want to know. We have the assessment. We call it pinpointing because we need to know specifically the goal that we want to achieve, right? Where we want to go, and specifically what actions we need to go to get there, okay? All that requires. So no matter what they ask you in that first prompt a while back, they said, how are you going to gather data? Okay, so that could be a pinpoint. I need to gather this kind of data, student interviews, this and that and the other. How am I going to do it? Well, we're going to interview teachers. We're going to, or social validity data. We're going to gather social validity data. We're going to interview teachers. We're going to interview students. We're going to interview this person. You know, I'm going to go, you know, observe. You know, why? Because we're going to get data that we can assess. Okay. And then the next part is like, we need measurement. Well, that's the kind of measures that we're getting. We're going to use that data to measure what's going on, how people are feeling about it. So when we talk about measure, we need to talk about whether if it's student achievement and we're trying to pinpoint getting an improvement in reading scores, and we say we're going to get people to use, you know, more questioning strategies. That's a pinpointed behavior to do in the classroom, or more formative assessments. We need to have a way to measure the results because they might be using these or not. But how do we know if it's working if we don't have a result? And these are like these formative assessments that we talk about in the classroom. These are these quizzes. These are the things that are, the more immediate we can make these, the more that whether it's a classroom leader can adjust their instruction or the school leader can adjust their interventions. So you have to have some sort of metrics to know. If you were setting up something like we're going to improve school-wide behavior, a result might be daily referrals. It could be, you know, weekly suspensions or something along those lines, you know. So, okay, that's an important result. One of the behaviors, a pinpointed behavior might be that, well, we need people to be at their posts in the morning, greeting students when they come in. We need them to be transitioning students in the hallway in straight lines or these things. Those become very specific behaviors that we can line with that result. Does that make sense to everybody so far? So we have a pinpointed result and a behavior, and we have to be able to measure that result, and we have to be able to measure that behavior because we need to know if people are engaging in the behavior that is required to achieve that result. Okay, the next part is it doesn't matter. You can measure all you want. If nobody can see the measure, what does it matter? What does it matter? So we need to be able to have a way to provide feedback to people. So if you have like referral data, well, most teachers don't know collectively what that looks like. If they've been doing good classroom management, if they've been using the 4-to-1, yes, Greg, oh, Champs is awesome. That's my favorite. If they've been using the 4-to-1 strategies, well, they need to know that they're getting less behavior problems in their classroom, but also it's working across the school. The school leader would pump back feedback. And how do they do that? Well, they might do it in memos. They could do an email. They could do it on a graphic that's in the front office that shows that we're moving towards our goal, right? Here are the metrics, and that becomes feedback to people. I'm going to pause here for a second because I'm giving a lot of information, but it's everything I said so far is covered in these 4 essentials. To this point, do I have any questions? Because we're going to get into the 4th essential in just a second. You need to know the result you want, the behavior that's going to get there, okay? And I'm going to cover both these again and again with the concrete examples. We need to know how we're going to measure that result and how we're going to measure the behaviors. We need to know if people are doing, and then we need to be able to provide them feedback on the results and how well they're doing with the behavior. Does that make sense to everybody? If it does, please put a yes in there. If it doesn't, put a no. But know that I'm going to cover it with concrete examples in just a second. Good. Okay, I'm getting a lot of yeses. Good. I'm getting all yes. Awesome. Okay, great. Good. Thank you guys for responding. Now, here's the most important thing, and that is the value, okay, what we call reinforcement. And again, I'm going to give you guys a little special thing at the end of this. You can hit the next one, Dr. A. And thank you guys for the response. People need to see that a meaningful outcome is occurring as a result of those behaviors. And all those things I just talked about, having a behavior, having a measure of that end result, having a measure of both those, and using feedback. If people see they're moving towards a desired result, that becomes a naturally occurring reinforcer. It doesn't have to be a Skittle. It doesn't have to be a ticket. It has to be something meaningful is occurring as a result of that, right? And so a lot of people think that rewarding is reinforcement. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I don't want to confuse it. Reinforcement is only measured based on, is somebody doing that behavior more or not? If they're doing it more or it makes it stronger, then they are. Make sense, everybody? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through these strategies very quickly, these next, but they're concrete strategies. Okay. Okay. So I want you to pretend, because I'm going to make this in real life. If you're trying to lose weight, and I want this visual in your head when you're trying to work through this stuff, you could even like put this on a piece of paper to make sure you got this all done as like a strategy. If you were trying to lose weight, what would be like a result that you might want? Go ahead and type it in the box, right? Are you just going to say you're going to lose weight, or what do we normally say there if we want to pinpoint something? What do we give there? Is it lose? Yeah. Okay. Somebody says we want to lose 20 pounds, right? So it's very specific, right? Go ahead and hit that box, Jason. Yeah, it could be an increase in muscle mass. Somebody could say, I want to increase muscle mass, right? Maybe they want to gain weight, you know, but let's say that it's, well, I want to lose 10 pounds. So when we talk about losing that weight, what are the pinpointed behaviors? What might be something that's going to move us in the right direction to achieving that desired result? Okay, so good. I heard diet and exercise. That's right. But is that enough? And I just laid it out there. Saying I'm going to diet and exercise is good. It's a classification of behaviors, but we need to know specifically what we're going to do to achieve those things, right? So Gina just gave something very specific. I'm going to cut out sugars. That's a very specific behavior. I'm going to eat this instead. If I say I'm going to go into the gym, well, I need to go into the gym in order to I'm going to work for this many minutes, and I'm going to burn these many calories, right? Shelley said mindset. Mindset is a very important. What we call that is an establishing operation. That's the want. That's the thing that's getting you to want to engage in that behavior. And good leaders actually create that want for people. They start with that why. They motivate people. They're inspirational people. But in order for them to keep behavior going, right, from the initial part, people need to engage in that behavior. And when you see yourself losing weight, right, that first time, we've all done that stuff, that first time you stepped on that scale, how does that feel? Does that feel good? Does it make you want to continue engaging in the things that you were doing when you see yourself losing weight? You can type in something in the box. Yeah, rewarding if it's working, right? Sure. If you went on this exercise thing, you say, you know what, it's encouraging. I'm losing weight. My clothes are fitting looser. It's like, oh, this is working. It increases the likelihood they're going to do it. That's reinforcement. But you have to be able to see that. So that's why the next part is you need measurement of the result. Go ahead and click that, Jason. So there are some different measures of results, right? The scale, measuring tape, loose fitting clothes, right? All those become a metric that can serve as a reinforcement, which is down the line, right? We talk about. And then, of course, like you need to make sure that there's a measure of you actually doing the things, because if you're not losing weight, you'd be like, well, what am I doing wrong? First of all, am I engaging in the behaviors, those very precise behaviors that are going to lead me to that result? Remember earlier, I gave the example of questioning. And if somebody is asking lots of questions, but they're not doing it in the very precise way that I outlined, where they ask the question first and then they call on somebody, or they don't use the type of maybe popsicle stick strategy, so it's kind of random picking, they're not going to get the same outcomes that we want. So we have to make sure that people are doing precisely what they should be doing in order to achieve that result. And that's why there's research out there. That's why things are very specific, because people have already done this stuff before, and we're pulling from that stuff. In order to get that result, people have done A, B, and C, and people will take things and they'll only do part of it, and then they won't get that result, and they'll think that thing doesn't work. Again, that happens with PBS a lot. Well, you're not really doing it as it was intended to be done, because it works, and it's been showing again and again and again empirically. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have feedback, the measurement doesn't happen. Where's the feedback come from? The scale? Well, I mean, from this losing weight, what's the scale? It's the actual metrics, those contracts that you can see as a result of what you're doing, right? You have to have a way to see that you're moving towards that result, because if you don't see it, you're not going to continue doing it. That's what good school leaders do with or classroom leaders do with teachers. That's what good school leaders do with students. So this is part of your plan, whatever you're doing. You have a result, behavior to get there. You have to have a way to measure the result, a way to measure the behavior. And then you have to give the feedback based on both. Hey, you're moving really good towards this goal, right? This end result that you want. And the reason why you're doing that is because you're engaging these behaviors. Or we're not moving towards this goal. I went out and take a look. Here's what you're doing really well. To make it a little bit better, make sure you do A, B, or C, right? So you got to give feedback on that plan, what's going well, or how they can make it better. Make sense to everybody? Okay. And then the last part is reinforcement. If you're trying to lose weight, we might set up what we call sub goals along the way, right? Let's celebrate this stuff. You might have an end goal that we're going to improve, reading scores or math scores by 25%, but that could be a little ways away. It takes time to get there. Let's celebrate with the staff at maybe 5% increments, 10% increments, whatever it is, so people can see what they're doing is working. And you celebrate that stuff, you pause for a second, high five everybody, have a little something, and you move on. But for the purpose of the writing prompt, what's important is that we're rewarding achievement of sub goals along the way. And of course, we also want to give that immediate reinforcement to the people that are in those positions, right? Whether it's a teacher, whether it's somebody in the hallway, whether it's anybody in the school, it could be somebody in the cafeteria. We want to let them know that they're doing the right thing, so they're going to do it whether you're not. And by the way, the SD, all that means is that people, if people see that they're following the plan, whatever's been laid out to them, and their behavior aligns with the plan, it just acts as a reinforcer to them if they're seeing like they're getting results, right? So they have this thing and they're taking, check it off that they're following this very specific plan, and they're seeing, that initially acts as something that's a motivator. Hey, let me keep doing this. Or somebody's looking at it, let me keep doing it. I'm checking it off, let me do it. And then eventually they see this intended result. I should have taken the word SD out of there. Don't worry about that word SD. The main thing is, or SD, the main thing is people are seeing that you're reinforcing them, and eventually they're actually able to see a positive outcome for their behavior. Okay, you can pop all these off, Jason. And that is GPS, the same thing. Very specific result. You have behavior to get there. GPS to follow it. How do we measure the pinpointed results? Well, you have the times counting down. You can see the mileage going. You have a graphic that shows you the visual, that little bar getting closer. And then with the behavior, how are we measuring that? Well, are you behaving in ways that are aligned with what the GPS is telling you? Or is it telling you to turn around? Or is the arrow saying, make the next exit, turn the next left, or whatever it is? With the results, the same thing. If with the feedback, that if that screen was off, even though it was taking all those measurements, if you couldn't see it, that measurement means nothing. That's why you have to give feedback in relationship to results, and the behavior is the same thing. You're getting feedback based on your behavior because that little green arrows telling you you're going in the right direction, or it's reminding you, hey, make the turn up here. You got to make a right turn. And here's where the reinforcement comes for the results, right? So celebrating success, or like these sub goals, you might call them, what we call lagging indicators. It'd be like if you guys were coming down here, or you were going up to Washington, D.C. for some reason. And one of the things that makes you feel good, like these markers of success, are when you cross like state lines, right? Or when you, hit certain benchmarks. That all feels good, okay? And what's letting you know you're going in the right behavior? What's reinforcing your behavior in the moment? You're seeing all that stimulation that's coming by. You're seeing the trees. You're seeing the lines move by. All these things are letting you know you're on the right path. And that keeps you engaging in that behavior of driving, following the GPS, okay? Okay, next slide here, okay? So just as a recap, pinpoint, you have the result that you want, the behaviors that are going to get there. Okay. What behavior must occur to achieve that? So always plan with that in mind. What does the student need to do? What does the teacher need to do? What might coaches need to do? What might administrators need to do? What might district leadership need to do? Remember, all these behaviors are lined up with each other. Everybody's responsible for that outcome in one way or the other. So this is why we need to, figure out what needs to occur. And you figure that out based on that thorough assessment that you did at the beginning. You can't possibly know unless they tell you on that test what's going wrong and why it's going wrong. But you can say that based on the assessment, here are the results that we're going to get. And we're going to, determine some behaviors. We're going to take a look at the student, the teacher, whatever, and figure out what those things are. Okay. All right. Next. Yeah. And then of course, we're going to have a measurement for those results based on those things. We're going to use leading indicators, different assessments. I'm going to look at formative assessments, student engagement, or I might use lagging indicators. Look at weekly quizzes, or I might have benchmarks at the end of the month. And of course, we're going to have a way to walk out and directly observe behavior. We're going to do walkthroughs. I'm going to see if people are doing the things that they need to do in order to do that. And then next slide. Then I'm going to give feedback on that stuff, right? Feedback based on the results. Here's different ways to give it. Emails, newsletter, phone calls, announcements. How often? And these are things that you need to know. Like, hey, I'm going to give it daily on this specific thing. I'm going to give it weekly or monthly. Remember, one of the things are the more delayed the feedback, the less it has an impact on performance. Think the GPS analogy. And that is, if you were in a city, you didn't know where you were going and you got lost and that GPS was only giving you feedback every like 30 minutes, you wouldn't know where to go, right? When people are learning something new, the more they can get feedback, the more likely they're going to keep moving in the right direction. This is why having some sort of metric to be able to use and looking at that metric and providing feedback regularly is very important. So people know they're moving in the right direction. Of course, the behavior, this is where you can go out and let them know. And we went over this in terms of reinforcement. If this was academics, there you go. If it was an increase in something, hey, if it was the baseline was 40% and the goal was hitting 55%, we might reward these sub goals all the way up. Yay, we hit 42%. I might have like a little mountain showing climbing to it. And we would be assessing, putting that up on a metric. I'd like have a nice visual analysis and providing it to feedback to the staff. And we hit those goals, we celebrate. It doesn't have to be like Donut Friday or whatever it is. It could be like, we're doing a great job and here's why we're doing a great job. Or it can be that you give them something, it's whatever you choose. But the main thing is you're rewarding achievement sub goals, and also you're out observing and giving feedback to reinforce what people are doing right. I'd love that you did A, B, and C right. And here's how you can make it better next time. Make sense? And you can do that with individual goals. Okay. So here's what you need to know about reinforcement. I talked about this. This is something that's going to make or break you. Telling people what to do is an antecedent. It's intended to get behavior going, right? Great speeches, training, PD, setting goals with people, creating action plans. That's wonderful. Okay. But it only gets behavior going for a little bit. If people don't see a desired outcome, even if you've pinpointed the right behavior, if they don't have a metric and they're not having as feedback, or if that outcome is not valued, that behavior is going to go away. End of story. That's science over 100 years to tell that to us. Keep going. Next slide. Okay. Yep. So if you drive behavior through what we call negative reinforcement, this consequence, I talked about doing the speed limit, people will do just enough to get by, and only when you're looking. Next click, Jason. Yep. So what's going on here? That's that cop that's looking, right? That's you as a teacher looking at students and trying to keep them behaving, and they misbehave when you turn your head. That means that they're not behaving because there's meaningful outcomes for them. That means behaving because of fear of consequences. And so we want them to find value, because this is the culture of the classroom. This is the culture of the school. Okay. Next one. Yep. The only way to get people to go above and beyond. And by the way, this is out of Joe Leipel's book, Rapid Change for the Impatient Leader, and Aubrey Daniels' work, Aubrey Daniel International. They're amazing. They're gurus of organizational behavior management. I followed Aubrey. I've trained under him. He's wonderful. They illustrate it very well in their books. I couldn't encourage that stuff enough. But go ahead and click on it, Jason. So here we go. The only way to get people to go above and beyond, right, is to get them in touch with meaningful outcomes that are added as a result of the behavior. Go ahead and click. Right? So initially, we tell people do it, keep clicking. Yep. We say you're doing a great job. We become like the coach, encouraging people to go along. Those big green buttons, those big green pluses there, what's happening there is people engage in this thing because you're trying to create a habit. When they do something long enough and they see it working for them, this is them seeing it working for them. Click the next one, Jason. Yep. One more. Yep. So this is what Aubrey calls discretionary effort. This is the real measure of a leader. When people go above and beyond, even when you're not looking, this means you inspired them. This means you got them to engage in something long enough, and they're going to like innovate. They're going to be creative. This is the highlight. This is the great things. And when people do things long enough, what you create is a habit. Okay. And in the beginning, you go from telling people what to do to getting it to work, to asking people what to do, and then making work, asking them what they're going to do next. Okay. All right, next slide. Yep. Okay, so how does this apply? Okay, so this is like a recap of what we did before. Go ahead and click this, Jason. So remember, we have a summary. We have something that they're being asked for. And in this case, do you see the total reading gains? Remember before it was vertical, it was going up and down. This is going horizontal. So all we're going to do is speak to the data. The first one is increasing trend. The next one is a decreasing trend. The next one is a steady trend or variable, but you don't have to use those words. You can say it's going up. You can say it's going down. You can say it's staying the same. You can say it's going up and down. And all you're doing is looking at the numbers of the data. So you need to be able to speak to that data. And remember, why do we need additional data? In this case, why is it increasing? Why is it decreasing? In the statement down there, it says an action plan related to areas of need for improvement in student achievement. You can't possibly know what needs to occur if data is going down, okay? You can't. But what you can do is assess, right? And say that you're going to come up with a plan based on that assessment that gets people to move, figure out what the goal is, the result, determine what behavior needs to be engaged in, based on the assessment. If people need training, we're going to give them training. If it's a motivational deficit, we're going to figure that out and give them some good coaching, okay? And we're going to establish systems of measurement regarding the results, regarding the behavior, systems of feedback regarding the results, behavior, and then we're going to reward them along the way, okay? It's all the same thing. It can't be wrong. Here's how I might say that. I might structure with my response. And remember, I would put out the bullets first. Go back, Jason, please. Don't forget here that in your writing prompt, make sure you list the bulleted prompts as subheadings to make sure that you are responding to the question. Because if you leave that out, that's all what's in the rubric, right? If you miss those pieces, you're not going to be responding to the rubric, and you keep getting more points off. The less question you ask, the less you respond to that, the more you're going to lose points, okay? All right, go back there again, Jason. Yep. So here, again, hey, my action plan, I'm going to start with, I'm going to assess. I'm going to figure out what's going on, right? Is it a skill deficit? I'm going to give training. If it's a motivation deficit, I'm going to give some sort of coaching. This is going to be part of my action plan. Whatever the reading score, I didn't look back at the reading score, but, if it was grade X, Y, and Z, if it's want to improve math and, grade the 5th grade, I'm going to, move that up X amount of percentage. And here's what I'm going to do. If it was a skill deficit, I'm going to make sure that the teachers have this training in whatever curriculum if it wasn't aligned. Or I'm going to make sure that if the students weren't having good skills, we're going to remediate a little bit. But again, all this has to come from whatever the assessment tells us to do. I'm going to set up a program for measuring our result. I'm going to set up a process for going out and observing, right, the behavior daily. And I'm going to give my team feedback on the result. How are we moving towards that goal? And also, as I go out and monitor, I'm going to be giving them a feedback on how well they're engaging in the behavior that's intended to meet that result. Then as we move up on the results, I'm going to reward them incrementally for achieving these sub goals. And also, as I'm out observing the behavior, a simple way to do is say I'm going to praise behavior or just use the term reinforce. I'm going to reinforce or catch my people being good or provide them helpful feedback if they're not doing what they need to do. Okay.
Those desks are too close.
Huh?
Those desks are too close together.
Yeah, it could be. It could. Okay. Here are the references. I mentioned Daniels and Leipel. There's a couple of my other books that I've written, but I'm going to hand it back off to Jason. But Dr. A, I just want to remind you what I talked about is science. It's a problem-solving and decision-making process. It works. It's worked for me. It's worked for plenty of people, including my wife, who is a poor writer. She'll admit that she doesn't write well, but she uses principles to guide her problem-solving decision-making, and she put it on paper using that. So I hope that you guys found this helpful.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Gavoni. And we're almost hitting 7 o'clock, and I do respect your time. So give us about 5 to 7 more minutes. It's some real important stuff. And plus, I want to give away some of Dr. Gavoni's book. So quick question for you. Did you learn anything from this experience? I mean, I'm sitting here learning a ton of stuff, and I've known Paul for a while now and worked with him to develop the courses here I'm going to share with you guys here in a second. But,
Thank you guys.
The good thing is it's not about just how to structure to pass your constructive response. He gave you so much value on how to become an effective leader and what to do, what not to do. So we definitely thank you guys for joining us. So who feels a little more confident? He walked through, obviously, like I said at the beginning, this is just a small piece of the pie. We want to get you going in the right direction, especially for those people who have never taken this exam before. So let me ask you guys a question as we wrap up here in the next 5 minutes. Are you enjoying what you learned so far? I know this is obviously a rhetorical question. You're not going to say, no, this is awful, because obviously There are some things, a lot of things you probably picked up on that you didn't know before, and things to apply as you're studying and writing your constructive response. So do you think his pinpoint measurement, his strategy there is, do you think that's helpful? That could work for you to organize your thoughts and make sure you're attacking your constructive response the right way. Obviously, we need more practice with this, and I'm going to share you how you can do that here in a second. So who here wants to take it to the next level? Who wants to make sure they have everything they need to make sure they pass the FELE on the first attempt and not be one of that 58% according to the DOE, right? You want to be in that 90+% and make sure you pass that and get the help you need. So like I said at the beginning, this is just one piece of the pie, and I want to make sure, we want to make sure we give you what you need to be successful. And here at the Learning Liaisons, we understand that all habits die hard. This can mean two ways, you know, not studying the right way and getting very depressed and anxious, or spending money on a lot of resources that are very useless and not aligned with the exam and give you way too much information and focus on memorization, as that is not the key. As Dr. Gavoni laid out here, the impact of knowing how to be an effective leader and applying that and making a strategy to answer this. And this kind of thinking runs aligned with even the multiple choice question. So don't worry, we got your back, boo. So every time we do a webinar here at the Learning Liaisons, and most of our webinars obviously for the teacher exams, because there's more teachers doing that. So we wanted to try the FELE exam here webinar. So every time we do a webinar, we want to reward you for taking time out of your schedule. So I am sure, since many of you guys never heard of us before and signed up because it was free, we thank you for coming. We know you learned a lot, but keep in mind that it's a small thing. So what we do here after every webinar at the Learning Liaisons is we give all the attendees a very special offer. Now, if you're not interested in getting what you need to pass, you could sign off. You're not going to offend us, right? But I also want to give a really good bonus to you guys too. So real quick, because I know we're wrapping up here, we have got two great resources. So when we walk, and I want you to write down, take a snapshot. I created a very special link, webinar special, so that's easy to remember. It's going to take you straight to the Learning Liaisons website, to the FELE resource page, okay? So we have two things I want to point out. We've got our FELE Bootcamp. That is with Dr. Gavoni and Dr. Keisha Belande Francis, who Dr. Gavoni heads up the constructive response, and him and Dr. Keisha work on the multiple choice sections. It's all video instruction, just like he's talking about here, but working through all the subtests with Dr. Keisha. A few days ago, literally a few days ago, we added a mock test. We partnered up with another school leader out of Hillsborough County, and we have a full mock test, all three subtests with the constructive response, 199 multiple choice questions, and the support there you need. You can ask Dr. Fields' question in the course as well. And then what we do is we bundle them together to save you guys more money. So these prices here are with the 50% discount, and here's the code. When you go to the website, you want to sign up for it, you have to put that code in, and that is the half price that I put on the left-hand side there. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to do something very cool, since we have Dr. Gavoni here, is that I'm going to email you this stuff too afterwards. You should get an email from me in about an hour or so. What I'm going to do here is the first 10 people that use that code, and Sandy, I'm going to hook you up. I saw you purchased it. I'm going to give you a copy of Dr. Gavoni's book. Just send me an email to remind me, Sandy, that you posted that. I see that you purchased it before the session. So the first 10 people to sign up using that code, FELE50, I'm going to buy for you out of my own pocket. I'm going to buy for you a copy of Dr. Gavoni's brand new book, which it's a bestseller on Amazon, right? Right, Paul?
Yeah, bestseller. And it will, reading it's going to help you in life and as a leader, and it highlights or digs down further into some of the stuff that I just talked about. You'll definitely be able to use in every aspect of your life, personally and professionally.
Awesome. So I'm gonna buy them on Amazon. I'm gonna ship them to your house for you. So that's for the first 10 people taking advantage of that. So this code, it's gonna work through the weekend. So you've got till Sunday at midnight, 50% off. If for some reason you missed that and you can't do it beforehand, shoot me an email. We've always got some discount codes floating around that I'll be happy to share with you, but we rarely do anything 50% off other than like Christmas. That's the next time we do anything like that. So if you have any questions about this, about the bundles, about the courses, check out the courses on the website first. We have complete descriptions on there and information. If you have questions, I have the email right on the screen. You can email info@thelearning liaisons. That'll go straight to my email box, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. If you want to text me, Our business text number is 407-797-1499. That's easier for you. If you have questions, shoot me a text message and I'll respond as quick as I can. So that is the special link to take you straight to the FELE page, webinarspecials.com. The code is FELE50. That's going to work through this Sunday. And then the first 10 people that use that code, I'm going to pay for you and ship you a copy of Dr. Gavoni's book. So that wraps it up for me. But I do want, if Dr. Gavoni, if you have anything to share about your book, you want to take some time to share as we wrap this up?
No, I think it's you were never gonna. We made this book for anybody that's not the first 10. We made it as inexpensive as possible. Amazon wouldn't actually let us make it any cheaper because our goal is my co-author Brett Denovi, who is amazing. We really want to share like real life experiences and how you can use real practical science to produce positive outcomes. And we're trying to disseminate it literally across the world. So we're gonna have it. We have it in a paperback, ebook. It'll be an Audible next week. We're actually having it translated to Spanish. So yeah, you can go on it. We've almost had 50 reviews on it so far, and they're all positive. And I'm very certain that it's going to make a difference in your life, whether in personal or even as a school leader. Okay.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Sandy. I was just about to do that. So we got a couple of Q&A questions. When you begin writing a letter, does it need to have letterhead and address? I'm not sure. Sandy, if you want to expand on that, if you want to, you can turn on your microphone if you want. I'm not 100% sure what you're asking. You talk about the constructive response.
Yeah, as you're writing your constructive response, do you have to have the letterhead and everything up there, or can you just start your paragraphs?
I don't think they're going to mark you off for that piece, unless, you can if it makes you feel better. But the main thing is that you're responding to their questions in it, So you're coming up with a summary. So I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I never put it on there.
All right. And Lori says, will there be another subtest? Unfortunately, probably, Lori, we're not going to do webinars for the subtest only because they're a lot of multiple choice questions. We go over in detail in our bootcamp video course with Dr. Gavoni and our mock test. So we wanted to really offer this webinar because it's a constructive response. A lot of people struggle, and we want to introduce you to the successful proven strategies that Dr. Gavoni put together for you.
Nicole, I think you can just either write it in there and you can turn it into like a part of the sentence. You know what I mean? Write the subtitle in there of what it is, and then just, make it that into a sentence. The point is not to forget to address it. Right. You could definitely leave it in there. If I were making a summary towards the principal or the district, I would leave it in there because I would want them to know they wanted these things. And so it would be very clear that this section addresses this question they had. So good question.
Awesome. So anybody else have any questions? We tackled a couple in the Q&A. We answered those. You did such an amazing job, Paulie, that no one has any questions. They just knocked off their socks, right? It's a long day, right? I'm sure you guys are, only working a couple of days, right? A couple of hours working online, right? Not working hard.
Well, I hope, I'm sure these guys are going to pass, and I really mean it. I believe there's nothing more important than teachers. And I hope when you guys move on to become a teacher, you don't forget what it was like in that classroom, and you treat your teachers like gold, and you look at them. If they're not performing well, think about all the things that I said, right? Think about higher education. A lot of teachers are coming into the field unprepared to meet the demands of the classroom because they're coming out of field. Teaching is very complex. So we need to support them and build them up, because the worst thing that we can have is half our teachers leaving the field because they're not getting the support that they need. And it's at their expense, their own mental health, and the expense of the students. Okay. So support them, love them up, give them the tools that they need. Okay. Don't forget where you came from.
Especially nowadays with what's going on. Definitely. All right. So I want to thank you guys for spending time with us on a Tuesday evening. Once again, thank you, Dr. Paulie, too, for joining us, giving us time out of your schedule to help lay the groundwork for how to pass the constructive response. So our email is right on the screen there. If you have any questions, you can email me anytime. If you want to text me, once again, I had the number on the other screen. There it is, 407-797-1499. That's the Learning Liaisons text number there and phone number. So we're always here to help you. We've got your back. It's always about giving you the knowledge, skill, and attitude that you deserve that you need to pass your FELE exam. So we got your back until you pass. Let us know how we can assist you, and definitely take care of that, take advantage of that discount for you guys. And if you have any questions, remember, you got till Sunday to use that. I'm always here to help you guys. Just reach out and have a great rest of your week.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.